Welcome back for episode 5 of the Backwards History Podcast. This is the milestone podcast we've been hinting at since the beginning. And as always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
Okay.
Well, first thing I want to do, since this is a milestone of number 5, I want to plug a few people that helped us get where we're at.
Absolutely.
First of all, being the Property Rights Podcast. Josh and Taylor over there were the inspiration for me and Kevin finally getting off of our dead butts and recording what we'd been talking about for probably about 2 years now, isn't it? About right?
At least 2. At least 2 years.
And secondly, I want to give a shout out to my cousin Mike Ramsey. He's the provider of the music that you hear every time you start and end this podcast. He's on Spotify and Facebook. Give him a look. It's Mike Ramsey Music on Facebook and Mike Ramsey on Spotify. And the song you hear is Charlotte. Just want to say a big thank you to both of those. Without that, I'd have to deal with copyright. And
that's just a headache by itself.
Right. And then Josh helped me get all of the distribution and the editing and all that other fun stuff in order. So thanks to you guys. Without y'all, we wouldn't be here.
Appreciate it.
Right. And as promised for the last several episodes, this is number 5, historical naughty bits.
5 alive.
5 alive. So throughout history, there have been some horn dogs and historical instances that may have been taught in a different light than they actually happened, leaving out a few things.
Some more adult-themed situations.
Adult-themed situations. The first one that comes to mind that's on our list is everybody knows of Anne Frank, the girl running from Jewish persecution in Germany in the late 1930s and early 1940s.
I believe so, yeah.
And they've read her diaries, and it's a huge thing. I mean, a lot of schools still required reading. Maybe not as much today as it used to be, but Anne Frank's diary talks about them having to hide out in the attic of someone's house, running from the SS.
It gives you really first-hand account
of the Holocaust and everything.
Right, to be on the hunted, more or less, for lack of a better word. That might be the perfect word.
But one part that's usually very censored about her diary is Anne Frank liked women.
She was at that age. She was going through puberty.
14, 15. And she actually talked about being attracted to her best friend, who was also a woman, about, sleeping next to her during sleepovers and having certain thoughts and things like that. Now, given her age, now, of course, at this point, she would probably be well into her 90s or older. So it wouldn't be so taboo to talk about her, but by virtue of the fact that these words were written by a 15-year-old, let's not go too far into detail on that one.
Right.
But look that one up for yourself. It's an interesting set of information that it's not usually very talked about, if at all talked about, when people talk about Anne Frank.
So it doesn't make the top of the list, I don't believe.
No, there's another historical figure, one that's very prominent in the American psyche, Mr. Benjamin Franklin, the swordsman himself. And I'm not talking about his sword.
Oh, are you? Well, most people, when you mention the name Ben Franklin, you think of this wise, kindly old man who helped steer our nation towards democracy, independence from England, and was very influential with the Founding Fathers. What you won't learn in many books or in many classes
is how influential he was with the Founding Mothers.
Oh, yeah. That's one way to segue into it, I suppose. Ben Franklin was a notorious womanizer. He actually lost at least one friend because he, lack of a better word, kept trying to mess with his wife. And he notoriously spent many years over in France and England and was rumored to be a member of what's known as the Hellfire Club.
So he spent at least a decade in France.
Yeah, and in other places. But the Hellfire Club, well, nothing's written in stone because these are more or less private clubs or secret societies. They are rumored and have been rumored for many, many years to be involved in, say, throwing adult parties.
That's a good way to put it.
One you definitely you don't want to bring the children to. But even back in America, well into his 80s, he was known to all as a womanizer, and there's actually a quote many people would say about him to kind of sum up just how much of a womanizer he was. And it goes, Franklin, though plagued with fumbling age, needs nothing to excite him, but is ready to engage when younger arms invite him in. So
when in actuality, though, he was actually giving people advice on going for older women.
Right. And I believe it was in 1745, he wrote a letter, which wasn't discovered until quite recently, to a younger man who was plagued with similar problems. And in the note, to summarize it, he basically mentions the benefits of being with an older woman is they're usually cleaner than call girls. There's lower risk of pregnancy, and they'll actually be more inclined to care for you if you're sick. So he wasn't trying to tell the young man to any ways to quell this lust, but in other ways
he was definitely reinforcing it and giving the man some pointers.
It was not trying to help the situation.
Speaking of things that did not help the situation, number 3 on this list is Edward Teach, otherwise affectionately known as Blackbeard, the pirate. He was well known for his exploits around the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and one of his most famous exploits was his blockade of Charleston Harbor in Charleston, South Carolina, where they attacked several ships and raided several ships. But his main what's the word?
Main goal?
Wouldn't goal. That's not what I'm looking for. Ransom request from Charleston when he was blockading the harbor was for what you're mostly taught is for a chest of medicine for him and his men. They never went into detail on what that medicine actually was. In that time period, the accepted remedy for syphilis was mercury. The saying was, a night with Venus meant a life with Mercury. And what they would actually do is they would inject it up their, air quotes, pee hole. So actually he was requesting boxes or chests of mercury for him and his men to use to treat the syphilis that they had gotten with the, what's the phrase, women of ill repute?
Women of ill repute.
Working
girls.
Working girls. That just sounds awful. That sounds painful. But that stayed as the standard remedy for that for a long time. That brings us to number 4.
Number 4. During the Civil War, the city of Nashville, they had so many working girls, as we'll call it. They decided they couldn't outlaw it. It was just too much work. So they were going to regulate prostitution for a time. Because during that day, the Union soldiers had occupied the city, and the ratio was 1 in 11 Union soldiers would contract syphilis while being in Nashville. And as Will alluded
Has Nashville changed it?
I haven't been in a while.
I don't know anything about Nashville. I'm just being a jerk.
But, and actually, they would register. You would actually receive a license for prostitution in Nashville during the Civil War with the Union occupying the city. And proceeds would actually go to fund the hospital to help stem the spread of STDs during the time the Union soldiers were in the city.
But they were still injecting what we now know is deadly mercury into these men to try and cure syphilis. That sounds awful.
And I would recommend go online and look at the syringes they use. They're actually quite large.
Huge needles on these things.
I mean, these are not like those very fine point needles we have today.
Oh, no, God, no. It was like a metal spike with a hole in it.
It's kind of like a metal turkey baster almost.
Oh, that's really what it looks like. It's like a modern day turkey baster. Was their needles of the time. That is so awful.
It's terrible.
So awful. Oh, and now to number 5.
Number 5.
One of our American presidents. Usually they're seen as these dignified, proper men. Of course, I mean, we all know, there have been instances that we all know. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. That's not the president I'm talking about, but we all know that they can be an issue. Apparently, President Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ,
that's the one,
had a bad habit of exposing himself to people. This is not the only incident, but one of the incidents that we found a personal account of was apparently if anyone were to walk into the Capitol bathroom while he was using the urinal, Lyndon B. Johnson would turn around, still holding his member, and ask the person, "Have you ever seen anything this big?"
Now that's the President of the United States.
And I'm thinking, this is a men's bathroom.
What are you, a frat boy? I mean,
right. Right. Okay, yeah, that sounds like frat boys at Mississippi State. But God, what do you do? It's the President of the United States sitting there, turning around, and exposing himself to you. What do you do? Oh, wow. Yeah, that one, I died laughing when I read that one.
I don't know if there's an appropriate answer for that one.
Like, what do you do? It's the President of the United States. What do you do?
You just try to forget about it and never mention this to anyone again.
Well, there's so many more. We may have to make this in every 5 episodes. We have another historical naughty bits because there's plenty more.
There's so much out there.
There was one. There's a couple of these that we have to sift through them to make sure that we stay on the PG, because some of them are so explicit, even in their toned down versions, that we kind of
there are some
we kind of dare not talk about them, like famous composers and their songs.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, there was one. Several other things. Yeah,
several kings and queens throughout history who had unusual appetites. You could do several on Roman emperors, I'm sure.
We would spend a month nonstop recording if we were talking about the Roman emperors as a whole.
Oh, wow.
And all of their crazy stuff. But yeah, this is the episode 5 we've been hitting at for a while, showing that not all historical misconceptions have to be strict and educational.
They can be fun and very entertaining.
Or really strange.
Oh yeah, definitely strange.
Now we'll definitely get into the strange and different. But our next episode is going to be with our special guest, our friend Michael, talking about the Bay of Pigs incident from personal perspective on his part, through family and through how they ended up here in the United States. But as always, please don't ever take our word for things. Please look it up for yourself, especially the stuff we talked about today. You will get a laugh and you'll be able to read in more detail than we were able to share with you on the podcast.
You might want to clear your browser history when you're done.
Not safe for work.
No.
Not safe for work at all. But as always, trust, but verify.